Energy Transition, episode number 81. Our topic today is disastrous speeds and oil shortage. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good day. Hello.
Look at this heads, non-fact-based estimations of peak oil. So important. This extremely risk OPEC criticize the international agency. OPEC warns of hell. Oh my God. And this is the last one, but it's very, very important. So the OPEC demand projections nowadays is 100 million barrels a day, but keep the same level or more till 2045, that division. So it's extremely contrary of the international agency. Oh, great. Let's remove this and go to the first point. Please, Irina. They failed in May 2021, calling for the suspension of new oil and gas projects. Now again, contradicting the projections made by OPEC, Shell, ExxonMobil. Disturbing, isn't it, Irina?
It's amusing because in 2021 they said we wouldn't need more oil and gas exploration because oil and gas demand will decline under the weight of the transition, which didn't happen. And they have been contradicting themselves ever since, by the way, because they keep telling us that oil and gas demand, especially oil demand, is going to peak anytime now, which they did in their latest report. But it's not peaking, it's nowhere near peaking. But I really like the immediate response of OPEC. And to me, this response was, gloves are off. We're going to tell you the truth, straight. You do what you want with it. Because OPEC has been repeating the same thing. Stop talking down oil and gas because this is dangerous. Because if there is not enough investment in oil and gas, and there has been underinvestment for years in new oil and gas production, we will be jeopardizing the global energy security, which they said again now. This is indeed dangerous, it's risky, because eventually it will lead to energy shortages. And this is disturbing. Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. Tammy, is something related to credibility?
That's a really good point. I mean, as we've talked about before, it seems like the IEA's credibility keeps every time Fatty Birrells talks about stuff, their credibility goes further and further down the hole. And I put here in the private chat, and maybe Armando, you can put this in the comments or something. But Fatty Birrell talked to the Guardian last week, the socialist newspaper in the UK, and he warned. I put this quote here. He warned that companies and OPEC are not taking on board the IEA's full advice. And he said, and I'm quoting here, they are misjudging the market trends. So apparently OPEC and ExxonMobil and BP and Shell and the big companies are misjudging market trends.
That's called projection, by the way.
Right. And he said they believe what they want to believe. And they also misjudge the mood of the people in the street as far as climate change is concerned and their responsibility. And I'm thinking, wow, that, like Arita said, that's such projections because the IEA and Fatty Birrell are basically believing what they want to believe and hoping they can push investment by coming out with a lot of these reports and whatnot to divest from oil and gas and to do what OPEC is warning about. And as Irina said, there's insufficient investment to keep maintaining production at a level that will be required. And, they're honestly, I feel like they're just trying to push that investment mark further down the road so that investors will leave oil and gas and go into whatever the latest trend is, whether it's hydrogen or wind, solar, batteries, whatever governments are deciding is the next new thing.
Perfect. David, before you go,
Yeah.
promise, no go. Hi to you too, for you too.
Hi.
uh, uh, Portia Taylor. The reason PPL talked down oil and gas
The
because
reason people talk down oil and gas is because they pay themselves instead of putting the money to invest.
one more comment from him. It's like big tree. David, please.
Can y'all hear me?
Sure.
Oh yeah, perfectly.
Hello?
Please, go ahead. Yes.
You can't hear me?
Yes.
No,
Yeah.
we can hear.
Yes, please go ahead, David. David's not hearing.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, it looks like I'm on some kind of a delay. I don't know what's going on. My audio's delayed. I apologize for this. I don't know what's happening, but yeah, I think that's right.
Yep.
You know, and I think what Tammy said is well taken, that the IEA puts out these wishful thinking studies. It's all politically motivated. The companies like Exxon, Shell, BP, OPEC have a motive, a clear profit motive and a business motive to get these projections right. It doesn't do these companies any good to misproject the market, right? IEA, on the other hand, is trying to influence politics. They're trying to influence government policy. They're trying to influence investment decisions, and so their reports are always going to be suspect as a result. And you know, it's really hard to take anything Fatih Birol says seriously in any way.
Yep. Yep. Can you hear us, David?
Yes.
Okay, great. Another point from Andrew Lane. More climate denial drivel. Please, David.
More climate denial drivel from the fanatical fossil fuel fan club. Notice no one on here has any kind of official education in science, but all work in oil and gas. Well, that's not true at all, but thank you for your comment.
Thanks.
Tell us
That's
about your
really
experience
nice.
in the oil and gas industry arena, and Tabby, give us the detail.
Yeah.
Oh gosh. So
I
I'm
don't
wondering.
have any.
Yeah, I mean, does the IEA have people monitoring us now? They got to send in some
Apparently.
trolls. I don't know.
No, but
Well,
it's good to
yeah.
have some critics, even if it's
Yeah.
not really criticism, but you know, ad hominem or whatever. Yeah.
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 Good morning, Mr. Birol, if you are here.
Makes for a nice change. But the thing is, I recently wrote a piece about this on a topic we have discussed many times before, that it's a religion now, and you don't question religious beliefs even when they clash with facts, which is what's happening with the transition, which is what Fatih Birol is doing. I mean, the clearly obvious fact is that wind energy is failing. There is plenty of evidence, including and notably coming from the wind industry itself. They can't make ends meet without a lot more government support. And if you really need subsidies to survive, then something is wrong with what you're doing. Something is not right with the product you are producing. But of course, the transition enthusiast, as possibly this commenter, would just brush this off and say that's denial. Denial of what?
Right.
Well, sorry.
Yeah, sure.
These are the facts.
Tell what could be the consequence, the practical consequence of these contradictions? Shortage, higher prices, inflation. What else?
Well, there's so many different elements there. I mean, as you point out, the inflation and it makes everything more expensive. And if investment is diverted, then that makes it more expensive for other energy and which can't actually fill the shoes unless we all go nuclear or something. And even then that's problematic in some circumstances. But for the new climate related financial disclosures that are out there, one of the requirements is scenario analysis. And although they don't specify which scenario analysis companies ought to use, they do suggest that companies should use, if they're going to take something off the shelf, take it from a legitimate or an authoritative source. And the IEA is listed as one of the authoritative sources. And so a lot of these reports you could say are being written in order to create the scenario analysis that we're not going to use oil and gas anymore. Therefore, you shouldn't be investing in it. It's a climate risk. I mean, Fatty Barrel's comments were really about stranded assets, saying that if you bother to invest in oil and gas now, or coal, or any other hydrocarbon, it's going to be a stranded asset within 7 years. And so therefore, you're wasting people's money because these companies are going to be left stranded, and it's a bad investment, and you should go into whatever the new thing is.
Great. Our professor, Tom
Higher
Kirkman.
electricity prices. Yes, that's one consequence of all this.
Sure, of course it
David,
is.
David, how the U.S. Secretary of Energy is thinking about this? You know about something about that?
Well, to the extent she thinks at all about any of this, I'm sure she agrees with Mr. Barrall. Yeah,
She drives on
she's a
sunshine,
figurehead.
David.
That's
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. She's a figurehead who doesn't really know anything about the subject matter. Kind of like our Secretary of Transportation, who's Secretary of Transportation because he likes to ride a bike. It's a joke. They're all jokes, frankly. But this whole peak oil thing and stranded asset theory, okay? The problem Mr. Barrall has, and one of the big reasons why they do these things is because no one in the business community really believes any of that nonsense, okay? I mean, no one at any of the oil companies anywhere on earth believe these are going to be stranded assets because everyone can see the real energy crisis that's coming, and it's inevitable, and we're going to hit it within the next 3 to 5 years. And that is with critical energy mineral resources like lithium and copper and cobalt and on and on and on, that these renewable energy forms and electric vehicles have to work. They don't exist in sufficient quantities anywhere on earth other than China. China controls all the supply chains for all of them. And that's the crisis that's coming. And if you work overtime to crowd out investment in our existing energy system that has worked quite well for well over 100 years now, at the same time you're headed to this train wreck on energy minerals, the crisis we're going to go through is going to be completely devastating globally. And why these people like Birol and Guterres and Al Gore and John Kerry are actively attempting to cause this crisis to happen, which is what they're doing, I don't know. I can't speak to their motivations, but everyone can see the real crisis that's coming, which is why we've seen the executives at all the oil companies begin to reinvest in their core businesses this year, because they know they're going to have to be ready for it. And it's really a sad state of affairs, frankly.
Irina, Tom Kirkman is saying something that I said in the past.
Yeah, that BRICS Plus will align more with OPEC. Yeah, sure, because they know what's important. I wanted to mention here two stories that recently appeared on Bloomberg. Really interesting stories, because one said that shareholders in the oil and gas industry were willing to take lower dividends if the company spent more on the transition and on low carbon projects. Then another story, just a few days later, says that all executives who gathered recently in Canada for the World
Petroleum Congress.
Right, thank you.
Yeah.
So there, apparently, the oil executives are torn between shareholder priorities, which is more investment in oil and gas, and the transition. It's just a little bit contradictory, these two stories. Why am I just seeing myself? It's like I'm talking to myself.
I don't know.
Oh, thank you.
That's
That
good.
It was weird.
It's like, wow.
No, please, please. No, it's everyone can see you speaking loudly. So it's
Yeah, but I
fine.
was feeling weird because I could only see myself.
Ah,
So I found
sorry,
this really, really weird. It's the same news outlet, and it's a news outlet that is very much in favor of the transition, saying two contradictory things. So on one hand, we have climate conscious, transition conscious shareholders who want lower dividends but more investment in low carbon. On the other hand, we have the same shareholders who actually want more oil and gas and less investment in the transition. It's a bit chaotic, the messaging, I think.
Well, I wonder
why.
which shareholders. Is it like the big ones who are saying,
It's a good
well,
question.
we'll take a lower dividend if you do more in the transition? Or is it other shareholders who are trying to make money off what's left there, really? The only thing that's making money these days. And then I wonder also, is it related to the exit of foreign investment in China? And they're looking for ways in which to get a return on investment. I don't know.
But I found it really interesting because they didn't say which investors, but probably not small, petty, minor investors. Probably the big ones. Yeah. It's really interesting.
I'm not sure that's Stewart or Stein, because this is very similar to
Eliminating
Sounds
fossil
like-
fuels, as Mr. Birol and Andrew Lane claims we need to do, would kill people, and then everyone else left in the USA would have to move to San Diego and live naked with nothing.
Oh my God.
Oh, goodness gracious.
Tell me, what about armaments that are being
Oh,
used?
somebody's cat's in the room. I love it.
That's Vlad. Yeah.
Oh my God. Invite them to be part of this conversation. Oh my God, great. Tell me
He's an
about-
activist.
Tell me about
He's a very
armaments.
pragmatic cat.
Oh my
Yes.
gosh.
Can you hear me? No.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry.
Great, sorry. About armaments that being used in Ukraine. These armaments need a diesel to move, or what kind of?
Well, I mean, any kind of equipment that you're moving around on the battlefield, whether it's tanks or, Humvees or whatever it is that they're using over there, it requires diesel. And then you need certain refined products to do jets if you're going to be using jets and whatnot. And so it was interesting to see that there was low inventories of diesel and the price was going up and whatever. And I think, as I'd mentioned in emails, it's like, well, this seems to happen every year, and they make a big deal about it, and they say, oh, there's shortages and so on. And I think it has to do with how the switch over and refining and doing maintenance and whatnot. But every year it's like September, October, they're, oh, it's a shortage of diesel. And then I was just laughing. Then, okay, how are you going to get diesel over to Ukraine? But
No, but this year it's been a bit more serious, I think, because global inventories are lower than usual. Yeah, seasonal shortages possibly.
In Europe?
In Europe, and I think in the US too, because I follow Reuters' John Kemp. He puts out regular commentary with data. And he started sounding the alarm last year, I think in November. And at the time, he said that the slowdown in industrial activity in the West, in Europe and the US, will help alleviate the situation because, lower demand will help keep the balance. But recently, he came out with a column in which he said that despite the slowdown in industrial activity, diesel inventories are still lower than they should be, which is, I think, a cause for concern. But of course, they closed a few refineries in Europe and the US, and that just lower production capacity. You can't do anything about it. You can import from China.
Yeah, sure.
Where they're building refineries.
Yeah.
you see United States can increase the internal production because with this volume of energy needed for today to 2045. So what do you see with internal production?
Well, the United States internal production is, kind of leveled off this year. It's increased slightly. It will probably continue to increase slightly as technology continues to improve and per well returns and total production continues to go up from each well. But the rig count's not going up to any real extent. The rig count, frankly, is down by almost 20% domestically in the United States since January, and I don't see that trend really changing in the U.S. Companies are in a real comfort zone now with leveled off drilling activity, and they're making high profits with high commodity prices. And management at the companies doesn't want to take the risk of incurring the bad publicity that would come about if they actually tried to dramatically increase drilling. So you're not going to get a supply response from the United States. The other problem we're going to have in the United States is about 20% of our refineries are scheduled to be closed over the next 5 years. Yeah. And all the refinery growth is going to happen in China and India and Asia, Indonesia, places like that throughout Asia. And so that's going to inevitably result in a situation where we're going to have to be importing a great deal of distillates of gasoline and refined products here to the United States in the coming years. And, that again, everything that's happening in this energy transition is almost as if it's intentionally designed to leave the United States and the rest of the Western world entirely dependent on China for our energy security. And you can say, well, that's a conspiracy theory. But if you just take a look at the results and the trends and where we're headed with all of this, it's pretty undeniable. And, I'm sorry, hate to be the guy spreading the conspiracy theories.
Let me show what Tom Kirkman's saying here. China.
Of course, it is.
It
has the capacity.
Yeah, including to Brazil. We replaced the United States as a source of diesel by China, 300,000 barrels a day equivalent for diesel.
Yeah. Nobody believes in stranded asset theory or peak oil theory in China either.
But they import oil and they refine and export products. Interesting.
Right.
Very good. Very, very good.
Yeah, I'm not surprised that China would be doing that. There was an article by Reuters. I just put a little clip there. It was back from February where they were saying how China had the most number of refineries in the world or something. They're like at 32. And as I put in the quote here, they're 200,000 barrels a day capacity each. And they just built another really big one by PetroChina. My understanding is they signed an agreement with, I forget which OPEC country, for a certain amount of oil every year that they're going to. There's a joint refinery that they're building. So you're right. I mean, China's not seeing that this is peak demand. As far as they're concerned, if their promises are accurate, they're not going to be peaking their production until after 2030, 2040. At what point after that, who knows what happens 20 years from now? But they're not committing to the peak demand argument at all.
No, and a few years ago when China was building these refineries, Bloomberg was very active in saying, "Oh, these are future stranded assets. China will be swamped with refineries and nothing to use them for." How the tables have turned. If only someone could have seen this coming. No, seriously.
Yeah.
Seriously.
So certain the transition would work exactly as planned. It's not even myopia. It's worse. It's blindness.
Well, especially with central planning. When has central planning ever worked and been successful? And here they want to centrally plan the world, and like that's just a recipe for disaster.
But if the oil production will increase, demand and production will increase to 2045, so do we need more refineries to be constructed?
Yeah. Yeah. We're going to
Yeah.
need a lot more refineries. Yeah. I mean, if
David,
you're going to retire a bunch of the U.S. fleet, you're
exactly.
going to have to build them somewhere.
Yeah, because the United States has about around 100 and some 140 refineries, I suppose.
Something like that. I don't know the exact number, but yeah, it's
Brazil
well
has,
into the hundreds.
yeah, Brazil has 14, and no doubt that in Brazil we need more refineries, no doubt.
Yeah. Yeah.
But David, to go to the last point, you think that military tanks uh, can use wind and solar energy in the future?
You know, it's so interesting, and this is how mindless and brain dead our government is. The Pentagon's actually been experimenting
Yeah.
with using
Yeah.
solar panels on
Yeah.
tanks, right?
Yeah.
As if you're going to be able to. I mean, and they do it just for strictly virtue signaling purposes. But it's a chunk of the military budget is completely wasted on junk like that, just so they can claim that they're pursuing their renewable goals and check off the boxes, right, for all the ESG freaks out there. And it's really pathetic, and it's a horrible waste of taxpayers' dollars. But this is how crazy our government is, and it's a real, you know. I probably shouldn't say this, but it's almost a mental illness what we're doing
Almost.
in the energy space.
Almost is good.
Almost. I'll use that
Almost is polite.
qualifier.
Yeah.
Yeah, very polite.
Yeah, I'm a polite person. You know, my mom taught me well.
Absolutely.
But this is really this is really the definition of insanity, folks.
Yeah.
And
It is.
and to be doing things like this, wind and solar have a place. Okay, when they're used properly and managed properly, they can actually be beneficial in some ways, particularly solar. Although I'm increasingly convinced wind has no real benefit at all the way it's currently modeled. Um, but to try to apply it in all these ways that they just really everybody common sense tells you they can't be applied is a waste of time and money and energy, and it's a waste of resources, and it sends us down into these rabbit holes that are not productive in any way at all. And we need people making these decisions. We need a whole different set of people than what we currently have leading these institutions.
Mm-hmm. Great. Hi, Shaik.
Hi.
Yeah. Hi.
Hi,
And
Shaik.
there's a very long comment.
You all mentioned shareholders are torn between investing in companies focused on the energy transition versus energy resources. I'm shocked to see how much major ESG banks, major financial institutions have a share of stranglehold on some of our Eastern region natural gas infrastructure. Yeah. Case in point, Berkshire Hathaway, BOA, JP Morgan, Chase, etc. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, that's the way it's gone. That's where the money is. And you know, that's the people influencing those investment decisions and making it all.
Yeah, that's right. We cannot identify the person that's writing here, but the LinkedIn user. Anyone here?
No idea.
Oh yeah, there was a news report that somebody was going to build the first new refinery in the United States for the last 50 years or something. Yeah, what a brave man. I have no idea how this is going.
Good luck.
High capacity.
Yeah, good luck with that.
I wonder what the approval process is like for that. I mean,
yeah, 20 years from now, maybe he'll have his permits.
Yeah. Oh, can I add one thing? So Doomberg sent out a note the other day about wind. And, you know, I don't think you need to be a science expert to understand the concept of low energy density. And Doomberg went on about how wind is in big trouble because of low energy density and all the minerals and all the different things we've been talking about. And So I just wanted to give a shout out because it was a really good post on what the issues are facing the wind industry at the moment, and it ties in a lot to what we'd been hearing from Siemens, Gamesa, and some of the other companies and Ørsted and their problems. So yeah, just a shout out.
And what would be our conclusion for today's conversation?
Don't believe anything the International Energy Agency says.
Keep it, yeah, I don't know. Take it with a grain of salt.
And how do you believe that OPEC is totally
when
right?
you see these studies, consider the motivations behind them.
Yeah, I mean, clearly OPEC. Yeah, I mean, OPEC, of course, has its own reasons for saying what it wants to say, right? Because they're trying to encourage more investment to ensure that the fields stay productive and whatnot. So, of course, they have a vested interest in saying, you know, you guys are full of garbage and you need to double down on investment here. We need help or whatever. But on the other hand, they're at least a little bit more realistic than some of the things that we're hearing come out of the IEA and whatnot. And ExxonMobil was making a similar case as well, that there needs to be more investment.
Shell, same thing.
Yeah,
same.
Okay. Thank you, pseudoscientists. Thank you, True. And people, was a great conversation. Thank you so much. It was a great Monday morning.
Have a great week. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye-bye.